Hello, agus fáilte go t-seachdain. In program ag BBC ALBA ha dul go crea scéalach gan an bornaíoch ingantach an an sil spórs na ALBA. Is mis Iona Ballantyne agus ha mi tolí tirí ra go bhfuil Emma Black a rás callrooms in studio, sean cluichad ar Jean de skip in na ALBA agus té chluich bharrachd ar dèidh turas ga dúich. Ar y program yn och, geif sy'n biach ar y neach a hannig amach dilwyn gymryd prif lig ng bh'ann ystat son 3-seachdain. Fyr sy'n sylrash ar y hwyl y tyl an yn SWPL a hyn gwrw cysio, agos clwnnidh sy'n cwtioch fwsir a ffwler, y chyd fforanoch y clwych an y gem ball-coise Americanach ng fiar sy'n tawyn yn uri. Badul gyn tosio gyn SWPL rhys ac yn jyr chiachgain, ac ys yn neach von Riaghaltas dilwyn, cha fi geamaichean ga clwych son 3-seachdain an yn SWPL a hyn sy'n ia. Ha 3-seachdain ar y fi chynil fiach mwyn neach, agos y cuide mar a ha lig ar y gol hw cysio.
I mean, we are obviously really disappointed, but I think the First Minister said yesterday it's the most perilous situation we've been in since the start of the pandemic. So whilst we are very disappointed, we do think that the action was probably necessary in the current circumstances. You know, we want our players and volunteers and coaches to be, you know, like everyone else in the country, kept safe. And I think, you know, this probably was, you know, coming down the line anyway. So it's disappointing, but totally understand why the decision's been made at this point.
Obviously hugely disappointed. You know, I think we've all loved the fact that football, you know, certainly our SWPL 1 and 2 level has been able to continue. You know, obviously it's an exciting time for the club. We've got lots of new players in. You know, we're about to kick off again on Sunday in a big game, you know, live on BBC ALBA after the short winter break. So yeah, hugely disappointed that's you know, that's been curtailed and we have this kind of 3-week shutdown.
Mixed emotions. There's a slight element of relief there because I think deep down when you kind of peel back the layers, you know, there's a lot of questions around about that can be answered around about, you know, how safe was it for the players to be travelling and being in close contact with opposition and visiting other facilities. So yeah, there's that element. There's also that element of a wee bit of disappointment, you know, because I know how much football means to the players and to my staff, and you know, we worry about their well-being under these circumstances as well. But I think, you know, we have to remain positive. We've got contingency plans in place within the league for issues like this to arise, and we're quite detailed in making sure that we had those plans in place when the league started back in October. So, you know, hopefully it's a 3-week period. If it's longer, then so be it.
To say I'm surprised was probably an understatement, because when the news broke yesterday, we're only six days into the restart of the season. And while I think it was very, very difficult, and I'm sure the decision hasn't been made lightly by the government and also the SWF and the SFA, you know, for us bringing players across the water and trying to get back up and running again in regards to training and planning towards the game, it hasn't really been ideal. But, you know, in the grand scheme of things, safety and the health and safety of the players and staff is paramount.
Thankfully, you know, at the start of the pandemic in March, which seems like only last week, we made quite a lot of headway in setting up various different contingencies for the league. So we're actually in quite a good position. And I think once we pick back up, you know, the league management committee will meet again and just discuss, you know, the schedule. But we're actually probably in a better position than I think probably the men's game is, in that we do have a bit of leeway there. But we are keen to obviously we have to name our champions at, you know, there's a deadline for that, you know, obviously for inclusion in the Champions League. And we've got 2 positions this year. So we need to make sure that's all done and dusted in time for that as well.
From speaking to my players early last week, there was a lot of concerns about not training necessarily, but playing against other opposition and visiting other venues. Because a lot of them have, you know, people at home that are key workers or vulnerable relatives that they're living with. And, you know, for us, we don't have any players that are, you know, living in bubbles with each other, or, you know, the majority work full time. So, you know, for us, I think it's definitely the right decision, but we just need to remain positive over this next 3 weeks and make sure that we remain together and focused in preparation, hopefully, for the league resuming. I think my only little concern that I have is that, you know, we've just came back from a Christmas break and have only trained for a week and a half and played one game, and now we've got another 3 weeks, so we're probably going to need a time frame in between restarting the league to be able to get everybody back to match fitness to ensure that we don't increase the risk of injury.
Well, certainly, I mean, today we've, well, the first thing was I made a kind of appeal to our governing body to speak to the SFA, which they've done, with regards to, you know, what's the position for professional women's teams that are prepared to test, you know, can we continue to train? And certainly, you know, I think from an equality point of view, I can't see why that wouldn't be allowed, because we wouldn't be doing anything different from the men's championship or premiership clubs are. Certainly I get that, you know, the league can't continue because I can't speak for every team in SWPL 1, but I would be surprised if they would all want to, you know, direct their resources towards paying for testing. But, you know, I think for us, you know, in the kind of mental health in particular, and well-being of our players, you know, we definitely want to be able to try and continue to train. So hopefully it comes back that, you know, if we follow all the protocols that are in place, certainly the moment for the men's championship and premiership, that we can keep training. I think we all know that the benefits, you know, of exercise. You know, certainly our players, that's pretty much all they've been doing since October, you know, is exercising, playing football and going back home. So yeah, listen, as I say, with a little bit of luck, and at the moment I can't understand why that wouldn't be allowed, you know, because as I say, we'd be following the rules that are in place for the men to continue, and hopefully that allows us to keep on training, and I think that would be hugely beneficial for the players and also the staff, kind of mental health and well-being as well.
There's been a lot of rejuggling about. We've obviously had to stop players from travelling over back into their host families. We've now had to have a few emergency meetings this morning and in regards to where we go, because we're not allowed to train. Obviously, some clubs in the league are in a position to financially probably test their players and maybe continue to train depending on the guidance and the answers they get from the governing bodies. Unfortunately, financially, as a wee club like Forfar competing with those big teams, we're not in that position. So unfortunately, we probably will go back down to Zoom sessions trying to keep us ticking over. But I can't see it being just 3 weeks, because as a manager and my staff, you know, we just can't go and play a game on the 7th of February when they've said that in a periodisation and a fitness point of view. It's just not feasible for our players. They can't be expected just to do a few Zoom sessions and play.
If clubs can test, can they then train? Because obviously, if you are, you know, some of the teams that are full-time professional, they're going to want to train absolutely, as are the other ones. So I think we are waiting for feedback on that, and if that is the position, then, you know, that will be opened up to the clubs that if they wish to train, then and they can afford the testing, which again is another big issue, then they're able to do that. We were really lucky to get investment, you know, from Mr. James Anderson and anonymous donors for many of the clubs in the game, which we've invested right back into the club. So hopefully, you know, that investment and the preparation that's needed to kind of restart again, a lot will have been learned from the last pandemic.
Emma, this news came as a bit of a shock. Nobody was really quite prepared for it. What did you think when you heard this week?
I was shocked. I thought if it was going to happen, it was going to happen when the first round of restrictions took place at the beginning of the month. So I'm not surprised though, just echoing what the ladies and gents had said there. You know, it's first and foremost, the players and staff health comes first, and those who they are in contact with, their family members, and also if they are key workers.
You know a lot of the teams in the league very well, and your husband Eddie works for Motherwell. What was their take on the news?
Disappointed, of course. You know, the clubs have went to, all clubs have went to a lot of expense, a lot of effort to follow the guidelines, wearing of masks, hand sanitizer, temperature checks, questionnaires, etc. for training and match days to go ahead. So putting all that effort into it and then seeing it taken away from you, it's extremely disappointing, but I think you've got to look at the bigger picture. You know, we're living in a pandemic and this wave of the virus is spreading much quicker than previously.
And we've seen as well, I mean, different teams, there's so many different takes on it. Some teams, as we heard, really want to train and test. Some others are very happy that it's kind of been taken out of their hands. I mean, how do you even get an even playing field now?
I think it's impossible to do that. You know, there will be players where they would possibly be feeling anxious, going to training, going to match days, travelling to other facilities. Then you have other players who are full-time, the professional footballers, so they are already in that football bubble, so they're not mixing with other people, they're not working during the day, they're playing and training, so that's their escape in life is football, that's all they know to train, so it's very difficult to balance it out for both all clubs, professional teams and also the amateur-based teams.
With it being all they know, these players, I mean, how do you even look after yourself? How do you look after your mental health, stay fit, and then hopefully get back playing sometime soon?
Yeah, it's difficult, especially the full-time players. You know, players, especially from overseas, who don't have family members or friends here. They've came solely to play football for Glasgow City. You know, Forfar have overseas players also, Celtic and Rangers. So it's extremely difficult for them, and I'm sure the players have got fitness programmes that have been given obviously by their management, they've got support staff, they've got contingency plans in place, and I'm hoping for obviously Glasgow City's sake for the overseas players that they do get the facility to train, and if they can provide testing and follow the guidelines like the men's football, then why not?
And I mean, you yourself, you've had young players already coming to you for advice. What do you offer them? What can you say to help them?
It's try and remain positive as much as you possibly can, you know, still have some sort of routine in your life. If you're not training during the day, you know, set out a plan, you know, have a planner, what you're going to do for the rest of the week. I think routine's vital and having that positive mind frame.
Well, I mean, safety obviously does come first when it comes to this. Are there positives to this break? I mean, to flip it on its head, what can people take away from this?
Their health, first and foremost. Obviously that's the positive you'll be looking at it. You know, there's, as I've mentioned, amateur players, there's a lot of them who are key workers, so they're going to work during the day, going to training at night, then possibly staying with relatives who are vulnerable. So the positive is that they're keeping their family safe and themselves safe.
Great, thank you. Well, we will be looking at this again shortly. Ha tríscipin a ruair fallah cach ag bar SWPL hen, Rangers agus Celtic a cúmal suas rís skip a bhonich in League Nuri Glasgow City, nach torsin súl rasmaha an season huca seo.
Leis an t-seachdain-sa a tríscipin a tína mach is sapaidir son a chiadáte. A Rangers is ag bar a league, leis go bhí a genú na sear a thug tail, agus heolait an comas an san géim dheidh for a bhunig at cuide gúneánaí in an skippe a bhunig a League Nudí, Glasgow City. Be a chiad cáil to City in the Rangers League an t-seachdain-sa. Ach an nila League Ulu am sa dúlach, le clichad an ura at Gina Seach an skippe, a cora mai Glasgow City half is chichtog céad geamaichean. Ha Celtics an trésaváte, da fún géad dèidh eith cach, ach bí lán is ag manager Fran Alonso go bhfuil coramacha an chicht balaing, le céad geamaichean geag di gol hast. An t-seachdain-sa, gaat a gopri cúsin amach mar a bhat dúil a Hibernian, le trí geamaichean it buanachug agus céad iad cáil go rica seo. Ach do Hibernian hain, be an cáil an na naidheachd an hart an ferris misachcha. Ha Spartans é tárútar má dhéanú agus haite siad go cártal ag miang a chlár, ach ma chluiche siad go má na stríche bí ada an scipe it na hátegan go hár. Bhí forfa farmington tollite glóla seach puingen iad a chláir gorica seo. A tail anamach iad cíalchú puingen a chaw an cuide geamaichean achcha, ach mae gyfiad smach iad a sin, socha gyfiad sgloch na ga yn un ysgypian a sláitsire. Sé am láindig áirichí na haisialt a topan na mar, le grún chluichid ar an úras an skippe. Bhí iad a gopur go cruaim mar bhuian an tèid-sa, le súl iad an aflúm. Sa chiad sédan achas sa Riaghaltas, chan eo puingen a tían go furasta sin adhart, leis nach eo skippe atá sias an tèid-sa, bhí a chlub a gulcha adhart chun na Stàitean, gus a bhí a farpas bharrachd an uair sin. Sé sédan taringach a héad a bhí an gorica seo, agus a sin iad bhirinn na de híchas ball-coise iad a sábhailte an na trí seachgain.
It's been a great season so far, but how would you look back on it?
Looking back, I would say the league positions are what I had thought at the beginning of the season, especially with the investment from Rangers and Celtic. Disappointed in Hibs, and I'm sure they'll be disappointed with their recent performance. You know, that's 3 wins just out of 4. So they'll be disappointed with that. Rangers sitting top and getting the players from Glasgow City, that's boosted them massively. Also having the players from overseas come on board, and you know, Rangers were training a long time before obviously the season started, you know, bedding in their players, building up that communication on the pitch and building up relationships. That's helped a lot. Celtic, on the other hand, they were delayed in coming back to training. They only had 4 weeks training before the season started, so they've taken a little bit of time to build momentum, but it's obviously proven on the park that they're starting to get the wins, and there's only 2 points behind. And
some interesting stuff going on kind of towards the bottom of the table too.
Yeah, obviously we can see the likes of Hearts and obviously Motherwell. They feel at Motherwell that there's no pressure on them, there's no relegation, so they're building then for the start of next season. Motherwell have got a lot of young players, 16, 17-year-olds. As the likes of Hearts, you know, this is their first full season in the top flight. They're obviously building also, like the losing Kevin Murphy to Rangers at the start of the season, that was a big loss for them. Then having to bring in a new manager who wasn't involved in women's football before, so they're going through a transitional period also. So I was expecting that to happen with those 2 clubs. And Spartans, I think, have been great. They've had a great start to the season, competing with the top 3, you could say, and narrowly losing points to them.
And I guess just due to the pandemic and how things have played out, I mean, Celtic, they've already lost a couple of their Spaniards who haven't returned. I mean, Anita, she also played a big part in scoring goals for Celtic. They'll miss those players, won't they?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and Anita's a top quality player, you know, playing in Champions League with Atletico Madrid, so that will be a big loss to them. However, you have the likes of Kathleen McGovern, who's been there such a long time, a young player coming through. You know, she had scored a number of goals last season, so she'll then be looking to step into that position and to gain our starting place back in the starting 11.
Well, we talk about players leaving, but I mean, Glasgow City, they're also bringing more in. They'll be looking to build on kind of what especially that loss last season, won't they, to Rangers?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's 3 big players that Glasgow City had lost, and as I've mentioned before, it's unusual in terms of they're going to their biggest rivals, well, one of their biggest rivals, playing in the same league, whereas previously they've went overseas to be a professional footballer. So Glasgow City, they always tend to be a step ahead, and then bringing in international players from overseas that they'll be looking to strengthen and add to the squad that they already have.
Well, as it stands, there is a 3-week suspension like we were just speaking about previously. If the season should restart in a couple of weeks or a few weeks, as we hope, what do you predict going ahead?
First and foremost, I think it'll be extremely difficult, especially for match fitness. You know, the girls have just had a winter break, so they've had no training. They've just started training again for a week or so, and then it's off, suspended for 3 weeks. So to get that match fitness to start back on the 7th of February, for me it's impossible. You need to have round about 6 weeks of training to be at a good level of fitness to compete in matches.
Do you think that'll kind of cause an upset to some of the games and some of the results should it start back up?
Yeah, I think that possibly will have an impact. You've seen the impact it had for Glasgow City versus Celtic at the start of the season. Celtic only having 4 weeks training, as I mentioned, so that had a negative impact on them. So if it does start back in 3 weeks, I'm sure you may see some upsets.
And as Vivian McLaren mentioned in the first feature, there is the crucial Champions League spots up for grabs. I mean, what do you even predict for that?
I think that's a huge decision to be made, isn't it? I know there is a deadline where the SWPL has to submit obviously the 2 teams to compete in the Champions League. So if the season doesn't start back, it'll be an extremely difficult decision to be made.
Well, it is tight at the top of the table. I mean, who would even be worthy of those 2 spots?
It's extremely difficult if you go by just looking at the evidence that's there. You know, Rangers top and then Glasgow City second. That you have to look at the evidence. That would be the top 2 at this moment in time if the season doesn't start back, but that's a huge decision to be made.
A huge decision indeed. Búnaí and Scialach Magérig ac in a nach sy'n leorach yn echtri. Fas a fuller na neach-ghlèidh son skip a bhon all high Vanderbilt ac yn sin hwrifis ag aki beachdan syl spors na bh'ann.
When I was younger, it used to be an insult. Kids would come up and say, "Oh, you play like a girl."
We are about to witness history in college football.
I want to change that narrative and show that playing like a girl is a compliment, is something you want to strive for.
Basera fuller dèidh iad an tíochtú ball-coise conference a geamaichean called the Ole Vanderbilt, mas the huidi braf will skip a ball-coise in Fair Americanach son gréisiachain a bhí na brippetar gaibh.
It was so funny because it was my roommate and my boyfriend were in the room, and I had stepped out when I had initially gotten the call, and I came in and I was like, "Yo, they want me to be on the football team." And they were like, "Okay, we did not expect you to say that when you walked back in here." And they were so excited. And I called my mom and dad and I was like, "I should do this, right?" And they're like, "Yeah." I was like, "Yeah, I think I should do this." So, I mean, they were very excited. So I got out there and started taking a few pics, and they were happy with it. And that's when I started meeting the rest of the staff and got signed on.
Mas de háirsigí tréineg Basera cínseach ams na cumasan eich gehéad, a géimigí sin na helting gona cóchlachad ar an úreiche.
And it wasn't because I was a girl. Like, it wasn't just because, you know, I'm a girl playing football. It was because, like, are you able to do this job? And I think that was the biggest thing. And when I got out there and I made the field goals, they were like, okay. And we, you know, started high-fiving and I became, you know, part of the team. And I think at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who you are. It's just as long as you can do the job well, that's what matters.
Leis grosera a hiad vanna chluiche ar a chluich an den game ball-coise coliste, mar va dúil ba jeffer fadachingen ag dúine me géin.
The positive have been incredible. Mainly I try not to look at them. The negative or anything, or comments in general, I have someone else like look through the comments and let me know, like, "Hey, they said this about you." I'm like, "Oh, so sweet." You know, because the negative is just a waste of my time. I have worked hard to get where I am, and I was in the right spot at the right time to be called up on the football team, and I've been working really hard to perform for them. So at the end of the day, I don't care what the negative is. I would like to say the narrative's changed a little bit. I'd like to say that, and then again, like, you know, there's people on social media that are like, "You're not supposed to be out there," and all this stuff, and but there's so much more positive around it now. There's so many more people pressing and being like, "No, this needs to be the norm. Like, this needs to be what we should expect from now on." And I grew up playing with the guys. I grew up, you know, training with guys and everything, and so it became normal to me and kind of an expectation of like, well, let's work. It doesn't matter who you are. Like, if you're good enough, let's train.
You have to have a strong mentality if you're going to be a student athlete at a D1 program, regardless of what sport you play. So I think that's helped prepare me. And again, I've gone through a lot of struggles. I've been told no a lot of times. I've been hurt a lot. So I've been through the ringer, and so like all these little comments of people saying, you know, whatever, it's nothing, because they don't understand how difficult it can be to just even get to the point of like winning an SEC championship. And it was just, I mean, luck of the draw that I happened to be available to be a kicker, so.
Gach cuide na gasci ag séra teachgrachan le teichí.
I think Billie Jean King did, and I thought that was amazing because she's a trailblazer in itself, and Mia Hamm and Tim Howard and I had a little talk back and forth, and I was like, I'm talking to Tim Howard right now, how insane, because I grew up watching him play and everything. So all of those have been amazing, and I think Hope Solo was like defending me on Twitter at one point. I was like, what, Hope Solo? Like, this is so cool. So those have been really amazing.
So I'm a huge Cowboys fan and everything, so Dak Prescott reached out to me, and the Titans as well have. I thought that was amazing. Any person in sports, I think LeBron James did, and Carly Lloyd, all of those have been so cool because I've watched them as I've grown up, and I've, you know, been inspired by them, and the fact that they're like, oh, you're inspiring me, I'm like, whoa, that's great. That's just so crazy.
How about this history that Vandy can make on Saturdays?
Last weekend, Sarah Fuller wasn't even on Vandy's football team. She was on the school's championship-winning soccer team.
For the first time, a woman playing in a Power 5 college football game.
Breaking barriers and making a statement that female athletes should always be proud to play like a girl.
It will kick off to start the second half, and Sarah Fuller will kick off for Vanderbilt.
Iad an nach go bhlá fichad íon daving fichad. Ring séra eachtrií mar a chéad fad an nach-chleich an an game choláiste, Power 5. Ag Olai Vanderbilt, chleich an olanach síne a chéad game eachtrií leice mar bhripetar. Atá segus an darna le an na Missouri Tigers.
I talked with Fitz, my special teams coach, during the game actually, and he was like, we'd love to have you stick around, and I would love to continue learning and refine my kicks and everything. I asked for some film on some NFL kickers that are comparable to how I kick, so I can refine that, and I'll stay around as long as they want me till they kick me off, so I'm here for the long run.
Chuim séra ára Gino eachtrií nó de chudaí puin go bharrachd a Vanderbilt in na Tennessee an ceann collegiach. A-nist has éire son bara chuine bhrosnacha gus an éisiampla reiche se lentain, a bharrachd a h-amasan eich gehéin mar neach-ghlèidh.
I would love to continue telling my story because it's been a long road for me. It hasn't been easy at times, and I would love to go around and talk to people about like what it's like to be a college athlete, and that it's not easy. There are hard times. There are times you want to quit. So I would love to go around and talk about my struggles and talk about my journey.
And, you know, I am also interested in NWSL and the opportunities there. I, you know, want to continue working hard, and I think that would be so cool as well to, you know, be paid to play soccer, like to have that be my job. And NWSL is really taking off, and they've done incredible things. So I'm really, you know, interested in that as well.
Emma, what a story, and talk about breaking down barriers.
That's incredible, isn't it? Yeah, I'd seen it myself on social media. She's obviously talented. They wouldn't have taken that risk to bring her on board, and she's full of confidence in her own ability. She didn't see it, as she's mentioned, as male, female. She'd obviously looking at her ability. Can she then do that in that game? And it's amazing.
Well, we have seen it in different sports. I mean, we've seen not this story exactly, but we've had female officials officiating men's games and coaches. Do you want to see more of that kind of men and women playing alongside each other in elite sport? Yeah, if they're obviously up to it physically, mentally, and they obviously do have a talent at that level. You know, it's obviously men and female, they are obviously extremely different athletes. You know, obviously men are stronger and quicker. However, you will have that female who could possibly match that at times. So yeah, if they can match it, then I would like to see these barriers broken down. Well, I mean, you as a mother, you do have a young daughter. She plays football. I mean, just the other day you posted a video of her doing her drills at home. How do you want her to grow up to perceive sport and kind of females and males playing?
Well, obviously Sophia's just 4, and with her little football team that she's at, she is the only girl that's there out of maybe 10 or 11. So she actually doesn't say anything in terms of why am I the only girl here. So I'm going to continue, obviously, allowing her to mix with both boys and girls at all sports. I want her to perceive where just because we're playing a girls' sport, it should only be girls there. Like dancing, for example, people would more or less say that's just for girls, or the majority of girls that take part in that, and I don't want her to see that. I want her to see that boys and girls can do all sports.
Are you worried that there might be a time where it comes where a team might say, well, this is a boys only team and Sophia can't play?
I think there is a rule at this moment in time. I think it's maybe 13 or 14, I think it's 13, where you can't compete at grassroots levels. It has to be then in a girls team, then in a boys team. But it's so good, you see at this moment in time in grassroots that you see a lot of young girls playing with maybe boys on a Saturday and then playing with the girls team on a Sunday, and I think that's fabulous to see. It's for development of the game also, like playing with boys who are quicker and faster and stronger. It obviously helps girls at a young age. And
throughout your career as well, I mean, you must have seen such a growth in even the visibility of women's sport and women playing kind of any sport.
It's massive, it's huge. You know, when I was growing up, you looked at role models, and there may have been the odd female athlete as a role model for footballers. It was the majority of men's football, whereas now, you know, I've got Sophia watching obviously all the women's football, take her to some games previously when we could. To have a female role model as a footballer, and of all sports of course as well.
Who's her role model just now?
Erin, she's seen her playing and she says that she's got the same ponytail as her in Cuthbert when she was running.
So that's her dream, get playing professionally and even play like Erin at Chelsea?
Yeah, of course. You know, I'm not obviously going to push Sophia in any way. However, being involved in football myself and also her dad, it's hard for her not to see it then. But at this moment in time, yeah, I'll take her to what she wants to do. She's still only 4, as I mentioned, so she's just got a wee football class at the moment and they're doing some tasks daily, so which is good.
What do you hope for women's sport in the future?
To continue growing the way it's grown, to continue to have investment, which I think is vital. If we don't have investment, the sport's not going to grow. And you know, having the media, having interest in it, we've got to then have the sport grow with that also.
Absolutely. Well, long may it continue.
Yep.
And thank you very much for joining us this week. It was so good to have you back. Well, sin airson program eile, ma hang ford o Emerson a bhí colorúm in studio. Fydda sibh ar lental gach seachcin ar YouTube, mar sin jan cín seachcin í séf go bhela cort a bhrúh, go bhí sibh gar lental agus nach cailsú program san bí. Cainig chu gra seo an program acab se, mar sin scailbhan ag fat is farsing agus cúma bhar a bh coid. Bud ac i spórs bhar nach na halbe, mar sin leib an dras.